Commission meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. This is the El Segundo Planning Commission, and as always, we're going to begin by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'll ask everyone to rise and face the flag and join me. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And Venus, could we have roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Baldino?
Here.
Vice Chair Newman?
Present.
Commissioner Kildoff?
Here.
And Commissioner Hessler?
I'm here.
All right, thank you, Venus. Next matter on the agenda is public communications. Do we have any public communications this evening?
No, we've received no public communications.
All right, thank you, Eduardo. And there's nothing on the consent calendar, correct?
Correct.
So that brings us right to agenda item H, new business none. Next on the agenda is continued business, and we're here for environmental assessment number 1240. And this is a zone text amendment to update and streamline the review and approval process for various discretionary planning permits. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, commissioners, I will be giving the staff report on this item tonight. If you could give me a moment to share my screen with you. And pull up our presentation for this evening. Great. So as you mentioned, Chair Baldino, the item before you is related to streamlining our zoning code and the discretionary permit processes in the code. Just a little background first. The city zoning code has been in place since 1993 when it was comprehensively updated along with the general plan at that time. But over the years, we've amended the code several times to address individual issues or chapters that needed updates. And especially in the last 4 to 5 years, we've kind of accelerated that pace of code amendments. It's part of our efforts to be responsive and to make continuously improvements to the code as needed. And the most recent example was an amendment you considered regarding the issue of beekeeping. But one area has not been addressed very much, and that is the area of processing discretionary applications. And we've had feedback over the years about how complicated this planning process is. And we've tried to make improvements, and we have at the administrative level, at the procedural level, but not at the process level in the code. So the proposed ordinance aims to make improvements to the processes for reviewing and approving discretionary permits. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what discretionary permits are, please bear with me. I'm just going to give a brief explanation. So first of all, the zoning code contains regulations primarily in 2 areas, permitted uses and development standards. So permitted uses meaning their location in the city. As you know, we have different zones in town that allow different uses. And standards, when somebody wants to build something new, there are standards for building size, parking, and other things. And approvals, in many cases, for these types of things are either ministerial or by right, meaning they're approved by staff without any special approvals, or discretionary. As an example, a use may be permitted in the zone, such as say a restaurant, for example. And let me go to the next slide for that. So if somebody wants to open a restaurant, let's say at Plaza El Segundo, which is in our C4 zone, that is something that's permitted, and there's no special approvals required. But let's say that they want to open a nightclub or a banquet hall in Smoky Hollow. Well, the code there says that a conditional use permit is required, a discretionary permit. In this case, you, the commission, would review the location, the operations of the use, and potentially apply conditions or restrictions on the operations, such as hours of operation, noise, or security at the assembly hall. And those are some examples. And the conditions will be different from one case to the other, depending on the circumstances. And you or whoever the decision maker is would have to use some discretion in deciding on an application. In addition to the permitted uses, when somebody wants to build a new building, as I mentioned before, or a new parking lot, there are some code standards. And for example, new buildings require a minimum number of parking spaces for specific uses. So if a particular project meets the minimum parking requirements, then it is approved ministerially by staff. No special approvals, but if the project does not meet the requirements, then the property owner could request an exception to the rules. And requests or applications for exceptions are discretionary because they could be approved or denied depending on the specific circumstances. The decision maker has to exercise some discretion and find that there are some circumstances that justify an exception, approving an exception. So we just went over a couple of examples of different discretionary permits, but there are many in the code. There are conditional use permits, adjustments, variances, coastal development permits, and others. Some of these permits are reviewed and approved by the director of our department and others by the Planning Commission. So the proposed ordinance is intended to improve these processes. So in the case of the director level discretionary applications, the table shown here, and it's in the staff report that you received, kind of shows on the left column a list of different application types that require the director's decision or determination. And then moving along from the left to the right describes kind of the process that you have to follow in order to reach a resolution, a decision on a particular permit. Now, I don't mean to go into the details of every type of application and their process, but the point that this slide makes is that for each different application type, there is a different process. So trying to get a handle on this is very difficult. So this slide appears confusing, and it kind of reflects reality because there's all these different processes involved. And one example that I'll use from this slide is regarding who is notified when the director wants to make a decision. So in some cases, no one is notified. Some cases, only the abutting owners. In other cases, owners within 300 feet of a property. In the case of minor coastal development permits, it's the owners and the occupants. So there's a big variety in how you process these application types. Something that kind of catches my eye a lot is that under the need for planning commission review for minor coastal development permits, it's not specified whether it requires planning commission review or not, but it's upon request. So if a resident receives a notice from us about an application and they contact us and they have a concern, then a hearing before the planning commission is scheduled. So there's a big variety that can be a little confusing. So the ordinance that you have in your packet intends to standardize this process and for these director level administrative permits and have a single process for all. And so the table that I showed you a minute ago, which appears very confusing and hard to follow, would look something like this. All the same applications on the left-hand column would follow a single process. And no one would have to wonder if they have different types of applications, how to process them. So that's kind of the main objective of this ordinance. So moving along, it is similar for the Planning Commission discretionary permits. Those that are processed or reviewed by the Planning Commission. There is a variety in the processes for different application types. So again, the goal here is to standardize the process so that we have a kind of a single process or method of processing these applications. Moving along, those were the main two changes that this ordinance proposes. We've also made some additional improvements, such as updating positions and titles of departments and updating the historic preservation chapter to make its procedures or processes consistent with the other application types, and also reordering the zoning code chapters in a way that is more intuitive, more user-friendly. So the intent and our goal here is to improve things by consolidating, simplifying these processes, making them more intuitive, making the code overall more user-friendly, improving transparency and accountability, and being consistent with the city's strategic plan by, with the goals such as improving customer service, facilitating development in the city, and so on. And for those reasons, we recommend that you adopt the draft resolution before you tonight, recommending City Council approval of the draft ordinance. But we're not leaving it there. We are continuously trying to make improvements to the code, and staff is working on additional ordinances currently to further improve several areas in the zoning code. And some of them are just a few months away. Some of the topics include outdoor dining areas and making sort of approvals of outdoor dining areas more easy, more streamlined, special event permits, simplifying development standards, and standardizing the permitted uses in the different zones. So that's for the future, but that concludes our presentation for this evening. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul on his presentation?
Very nice presentation. I have a quick question about integrating. I know that this is mostly internal, yet it does have to do with the end user, the consumer, if you will, and there are plans that the ease with which you have consolidated the process, will that be integrated on the new website?
Thank you for bringing that up. Actually, yes, one of the main sort of drivers or purposes behind making these proposed changes was, well, obviously, yes, we will include information on our website, but in addition to that, one of the main drivers was because the city is actually implementing a new permitting system that will be able to sort of track permits and communicate with our accounting software and kind of follow applications sort of from beginning to end, from one step to the other. So making these changes in the process and standardizing these processes will actually provide very useful information for our permit software so that it's very easy to track applications step by step. So I hope that answers your question, Commissioner.
Well, it would answer if your permit software is integrated with the El Segundo, the new website. If those two things are linked, then consumers can figure out how, where, what, when, why, and where they're at with the process. That's, I assume, the plan.
Yes, that is the ultimate goal. Yes, that you want.
But right now it's not. But this is the first step to making that happen.
Yeah, so this is exactly a step in that process. Yes.
Okay. So your permit software will eventually get integrated with the website, yeah?
That's exactly right. Yes, people will be able
the goal.
to track permits online. Absolutely.
It'll be integrated with Brenda, it'll be integrated with the website, but it'll also be, you'll be able to access it with your smartphone. We'll get some of the status updates from your smartphone, and it's a first step, and it's an extremely important step, because the last thing we wanted to do is to incorporate the confusing, redundant system and processes that we have today into the new permit system. So we wanted to fix the processes first, and then incorporate those processes into the permit system so that it'll be easy to follow for the future.
Makes sense. Good job. Makes good sense to me.
I did have a question, Brenda, unless you have another question.
Oh, go right ahead.
I like that the noticing period has been adjusted, or the radius has been adjusted to include occupants, not just owners. And I'm curious the thought process behind that, and then adjusting the radius from 300 feet to 150 feet for administrative items. I don't think it's that way. Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up on my phone as well on the for CUPs, but the radius looks like it's been shortened for administrative approvals, and then occupants are included. And is that standard with other cities? Like, why the adjustment there?
Yeah, the reason is for including occupants, first of all, there are two main reasons. In order to make the processes consistent, as you'll see in this particular table, coastal development permits require both owners and occupants to be notified. And that is actually a state law requirement.
Got it.
So if we were going to make all these processes consistent, we would need to notify both owners and occupants to start informing occupants as well. Now, the second and probably the most important reason for including occupants is because if you recall, Commissioner, last couple of years, we worked on housing and did some research together. And if you remember us doing that research, I found, when I was studying the census data, that more than 50% of our residents are actually renters. So today, when we notify the public about a particular application, we can only reach about half or less than half of the potential residents affected by an application. So that was the main reason for including occupants as well. So I'm just going to go back up to the other table regarding the director applications. Great. So as you'll see here in this column, today the administrative adjustment application requires no notification at all. The adjustment application requires only the abutting owners. So maybe people within 50 or 100 feet of a property. So in order to make things consistent, we chose 150 feet. And the thinking behind that was that for both owners and occupants. And the thinking behind that was that these director level processes, tend to affect neighbors within a shorter radius compared to, say, a very large development project that will most likely be reviewed by the Planning Commission. So we felt that 150 feet was adequate. It was more than we do for administrative adjustments, more than minor coastal development permits, and yes, reduced from what we do for administrative use permits for applications like alcohol service, and monument signs and things like that. So that was the reasoning behind that.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does. It makes sense. And again, I really think including occupants and not just owners will help with overall transparency and not getting responses after the fact on some of these larger projects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, if I can add to what Paul said, some of this is subject to state law. So I just want to make clear to the Planning Commission that not all of this is within the Planning Commission's discretion. Some of this is established by law. So I think what Paul did, which was fantastic, was identifying points in the process that are required by state law. And then as a matter of collapsing processes together, bringing other processes up to the level that's required by state law so that all of these processes are consistent with state law. So I want to definitely commend Paul because there was a lot of work identifying what was legally required and then bringing the other processes in line with what's required by state law.
I got a question, if I can jump in. So Paul, you're asking us, staff is asking us to approve this streamlined approach, which I'm all for. But we're also, is the intention for us to also be looking at all the text amendments as well in each of these revisions? And we should be planning on doing so as these additional revisions are rolled out over the next few months?
Are you referring to the list of amendments at the end of my presentation, sir?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got a 70-page document where you've shown these edits, where you've started to streamline things, and so I guess just sort of talking about process of what we're doing here tonight. You know, certainly this new approach of streamlining the director's approvals and planning commission approvals makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just also wondering if we're getting into text revisions and things like this at this point.
If you desire to look at some of the detailed text changes, you know, those are all in the draft ordinance. And if you needed to point something out where we might need to make a change, yeah, we'd be happy to hear from you about that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for example, one question when you're in the document, I'm on page 456 of the document, but it's actually page 20 of the PDF of the agenda of the packet. It's notice of public hearings, and so that entire section is crossed out. And so I haven't gotten through all 80 pages yet, and so I just want to understand where those public hearings now show up, if not here.
Oh, okay. If I may, I'm just going to put up another document up to help you, which was also in your packet. It was the outline of the ordinance, but I'll go ahead and open that up for you just real quickly here. And yeah, forgive me, it is very hard to actually follow all this because, you know, obviously we and staff have been working with this for a long time, and you've only had a few days to kind of review and digest. So our apologies for giving you so much to review in a few days. But just wanted to kind of scroll down our outline. And yes, so there is a process. So the new chapter for public hearings is chapter 28. So there is a chapter that was deleted that had the process, the current process, and then that was replaced by chapter 28, which is called public hearings. Did you want me to find the page in the ordinance itself where that is, sir?
Yeah, and again, I apologize for not having gotten all the way through this thing yet. That was one of the things that jumped out at me.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna give you the page number here in just a second.
Okay. You said chapter 28, right?
Yeah, it's chapter 28. So in the ordinance, it is page 47 of 56.
Gotcha. I'm here now.
Okay, so the entirety of chapter 8 deals with public hearings.
That's correct. And that was part of the intent that we took information regarding public hearings that was dispersed in different chapters, and we consolidated everything into one chapter.
Good. That's really smart. Great. Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, I know that we're streamlining these things and we're trying to make everything a little more less onerous on applicants and the public. But even though some of these items are saying that they're no longer going to council, the planning commission still retains authority to review all of these determinations, correct?
That's correct. So when drafting this ordinance, we wanted to strike a balance between sort of being streamlining things, but then staff being accountable to you, the commission, and to the public.
Okay, so it's an easier, streamlined process for the applicant, but end of the day, these items will still come through the planning commission. So if we wanted to have a discussion, we could pull these items, get a staff report, make any comments, and address any concerns we may have after reading basically the determination of what the result will be, correct?
That's correct. And then let's say over time, we present you a number of director level decisions, and you just adopt them or approve them, as a receive and file item. At some point, you may notice a pattern and say, "Hey, staff, you're approving, these types of applications regularly. What's going on here?" Or maybe we can change something. So every time we make a decision, you will be notified, and you can jump in at any time.
Great. And then even though your chart shows that several of these items no longer need the additional step of going to city council, it's still in the code that if the applicant is not happy with what the planning commission decides, they can always appeal that to the city council, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we still have the supervision and input of the planning commission, and then also the ability to go to council if there's any issues.
Yeah. And if I may just add one more thing, we believe that standardizing the processes will lead to increasing efficiency in the process. So we really believe that.
No, I agree. And I really want to commend you, Paul. This is part of the grueling work that is not only cumbersome and tedious, but just required. I think it's the most important slide you showed was that there was 9 code amendments. And of those 9, 8 have been since 2011. And to me, that really demonstrates how, staff is taking these amendments seriously and really putting the work in to eliminate some of the confusion, make things simpler, and really try to excel in that customer satisfaction goal that's been set by the council. So going through these revisions and reading a lot of cumbersome legal documents, these are some of the worst that I've read. So thank you for taking the time to go through and get rid of the redundancies and try to clean them up so that they make sense and they're understandable and they're accessible to the people who live in town. So you did a lot of work on this, I can tell.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Paul. He's worked. It's been more than a year, I want to say, Paul, that you've been working on this. Dennis Cook has joined us at the meeting too. Dennis Cook, as you know, is our planning consultant. He's assisted along the way with this project, and he's been a tremendous help. And a lot of these changes are, in a rough way, they're data driven. Some of the things we're hearing from our customers saying how cumbersome certain things are, how confusing they are. And then the other things is we found that some of the projects or some of the approvals we looked at over a 10-year period, every one of them were approved, and every one of them were approved with very little discussion. So we said, what, maybe those we can bring it down a notch and not be a major issue. So I want to congratulate Paul and thanks thank Dennis for helping out on this project.
All right, thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mr. Cook, as well, for your help on this. Definitely, I can tell the work that went into it. Any other comments or questions from the Planning Commission?
I have one, and I realize it's just really something that needs to be cleaned up, that it's just a visual thing for me, Paul. You have taken and gone through, and where it says like curb cut width, you've marked through where it says feet, and you've put in feet at top so that you know how it looks. Mm-hmm. And you missed one of your little areas that I would just like you to see you do the same thing so that there's continuity and consistency when you look at these grids and these schedules. It's page 2456. And again, you've gone through and you've written out, X'd out 25, and you use the number 25 to make it easier to mm-hmm. read. And so if you would just do the same thing where curb cut locations by just adding the term in feet at the top of the header and then cross out feet, then you're going to have that consistency. I realize it's ridiculous, but again, that's what I see.
Yes, we will make that
Perfect.
change in the next version.
Okay.
All right.
Really good job. Thanks.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Agreed. So this is a public hearing, so this is the time where if there aren't any more questions, we'll go ahead and open up public communication, and I'll ask staff if there's anyone on Zoom who's joined us and wants to make a public comment. Now would be the time to do so. Do we have anyone on Zoom? Do we know?
Yeah, it's just us here. So no one else has joined in, and I think we've given enough time for if anyone were to have wanted to speak. So I think we're good.
All right, thank you, Eduardo. So now I will go ahead and close public communication, and all further comments, if any, shall come from the dais. Anything addition? No?
I do have one other question. I mean, kind of going through some of the stuff here on page 26 of 56, which is page 42 of the packet. There's a table talking about drive-through lane dimensions, and there's a notation for drive-through eating and drinking establishments. What's a drive-through drinking establishment? I was just curious.
Yeah, it's a restaurant.
I don't know, but
it's a restaurant that happens to also sell drinks.
Yeah, okay. I was just taken aback by that.
Just in case you pull an in and out and only get a Coke.
Wait, that's right. Actually, I have seen in Louisiana, they have drive-through daiquiri shacks.
True.
Like, what? Okay.
It's coming.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right.
All right. And with that, I'll accept a motion.
I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 2863. Do I have to do all the fancy stuff that Carol used to do as well?
Oh, we miss her already.
I missed her already.
Mr. King has shaken his head. I think we're good to go with the motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second for Mr. Hulschler. Okay, and we'll take a roll call vote now, please.
Yes, Chair Baldino,
Aye.
Vice Chair Newman,
Yes.
Commissioner Heschler,
Aye.
and Commissioner Kildaw.
Aye.
Great, it passes 4-0. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Paul, for all the work you put on this. It's really going to be beneficial for a lot of people.
Actually, I do have one more question. So this goes to City Council, and then once, if they approve this, when does this stuff show up on the web, or when does this process get rolled into the public's purview?
Yeah. Well, the City Council, when it adopts an ordinance, has to have 2 readings. So it would discuss the ordinance, have its public hearing, make a decision, and then probably about 2 to 3 weeks later would have a second reading.
Right.
When the ordinance is adopted at the second reading, there is a 30-day curing period. So the ordinance becomes effective basically 30 days after that second reading. So if we were going to estimate when it will be in effect, it will be approximately 2 months from now. We will try to get it on the web as soon as possible after that.
Great. Yep, I think that's where it should live, and that'd be great.
All right. Next item on the agenda is report from Director of Development Services.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. I'd like to actually share a screen. Let's see, how do I do this? Yeah, there he goes. Share. So this is a follow-up from a presentation that was done earlier in the year. We told you that, El Segundo, along with all the other cities in the state of California, is required to do a new housing element. So, and at that presentation, I told you that there would be public workshops. And so we're having our first one on April 13th. This will be pushed out to the public through websites, newspaper, emails, social media. It'll be coming out next week. The meeting will present, what is happening throughout the state and what's required of El Segundo. There will be surveys done. Again, this was Paul's baby. Paul has taken on the housing element project with help from Dennis Cook. They've created a video. Our communication department assisted in creating a video. All of that will be going out next week, and I wanted the planning commissioners be the first to know. And we will all have a lot of work to do this summer, and this is the first step. And that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So
Thanks, Sam.
the video is going to be available, Sam, for us to review before the virtual meeting, or is that something that's going to be shown at the April 13th meeting?
It'll be, we're going to put it on the website. So,
Okay.
and through the social media, through the email, through the newspapers, we're going to point people to our website, and it'll have a lot of information, including a short video that describes what this whole process is. I'm dying to show it to you guys, but we're just working on the final touches. So I will, email all of you when it's finally available, and you'll be the first ones to look at it.
Cool.
And Sam, part of this housing element review we're doing, is that going to tie in with the city's plans for the low-income housing? I know we have consultants for that. We've got some money set aside. Are those going to be wrapped together? And
it's all part of a giant plan, and it's a plan that is mostly pushed on us by the state. But
Right.
We, like every other state, every other city in the state, is providing a strategic plan, and the affordability, the having a partnership with a affordable company that provides this type of they develop or they alter existing buildings and whatnot. All of that is part of I guess we can call it a master plan. Yes.
And since this master plan and these requirements from the state are so important to kind of what the future of residential will look like in El Segundo, has there been any talk from staff or at council about maybe setting up a subcommittee to kind of hold hearings on these on a regular basis, maybe quarterly, so that people are constantly updated? Because now I feel like every now and then we blast out information and then, it kind of subsides. There might be some use, there might be better transparency if there was some type of housing subcommittee within the city of El Segundo made up of residents who kind of dealt with this on a regular basis to help shape this plan, and then they could report to planning commission, to city council. I don't know if that's been thought of yet.
That specific point hasn't been discussed, but I'll bring it up and I'll come back to this group and report back to you.
And
Great,
Sam, what
thanks,
is the timeline? Sorry, Ryan, talking over you. What's the timeline for when those housing elements are due to the state to be certified?
So we're just embarking on the public outreach. We'll be doing that for 2 to 3 months. We need to come up with a draft document, housing element, by this summer, and then it'll be pushed out to the state HCD. When it's all said and done, we hope to get approval from the state in December, right? Is that right, Paul? We hope to get confirmation in December.
As soon as possible. There's a kind of a deadline of October 15th to have these housing elements updated, but there is a grace period of about 4 months, which we will likely go into.
But HCD, over the years, they haven't had so much power or authority. They are granted quite a bit of power now, so they could make our city they have a lot of power. So we wanna comply, and we wanna get their approval on this housing element.
So
And,
Sam, with that in mind, what do you hope to get out of these workshops?
well, staff has developed a plan of where they believe housing could, there could be more housing throughout the city. They will present some parts of that, some areas. There is some buffer, meaning, whatever they came up with, not every one of them has to be approved, but they're presenting some areas they think it's a good idea to have those housing in those places, and all of that will be presented, and then we want feedback. We want to inform the public, and we want feedback from them on what this strategy looks like. So,
And to Ryan's point earlier, that would also be interwoven with what I believe are going to be the affordable housing visioning sessions that were laid out. So those will happen. Is that all part of one meeting, or those are happening simultaneously?
Paul, you maybe speak on that? They're all working together.
There will be one community meeting coming up in a couple of weeks on housing, on the housing element. After that, we will take the input that we receive and draft an element that will be presented to you around June, around that time. But then this will not be the only community meeting we have on housing issues. There will be more. I don't have set dates yet, but there will be more community meetings before a decision is made on the housing element ultimately. So I hope that helps answer that question.
It does, yeah. I mean, just general comment, the scope of this is a huge undertaking.
Mhm.
It's big, it's massive. And I don't want to be caught flat-footed by community input and then it to come in after it's kind of baked and done. And I don't know, if we're going to ask for it, then there has to be some sort of process for actually incorporating that, or at least having more discussion about it. And it feels like we're operating in a pretty tight timeline.
Mhm.
And I know you guys are putting a ton of effort into this, but we know just saying that the state is requiring it is not going to solve the problem. So I just want to be
there is a
clear for that.
tight timeline, if I may. The city just received its final RENA numbers, as they're called, just a few weeks ago. And the deadline is October 15th. So we are actually having to rush, but we will try to squeeze in as many opportunities to get input from the public as possible. That includes community meetings, surveys of the community, and other methods.
We were really
So-
hoping that with COVID that they would push back the timeline on this a bit, but state is holding strong with the timelines.
Yeah,
And
it is hard to hold community meetings via Zoom.
really hard to hold community meetings. So, we want to do something that we did similar to Smoky Hollow, where it was kind of a community event, and it was good. We celebrated what Smoky Hollow could be, and we want to kind of do the same thing here. But I don't know how this is going to go, but we have to do this, and we have to do it through Zoom right now because COVID is still a problem. So.
No, I agree. I attended a couple of those Smoky Hollow meetings, and my takeaway was, wow, this town is way cooler than I thought it was. I mean, the people that came out,
Yeah.
where have you been? So
Yeah.
I would love for this to be similar, but.
Maybe when we have more meetings this summer, we could maybe get that excitement back. Hope so.
There was
Paul,
good
can you
act-
tell us what those numbers are for how many more units the state wants us to put within our 1 square mile city?
I have only the total number in my mind right now. It's 492, and
That's what I heard.
a big majority of that is affordable units, not market rate.
About 2 something of that is affordable, I think.
Forgive me, I don't have the exact numbers.
No, it's okay. Those are the numbers I heard too. And when you put it in perspective of the amount of land we have and the amount of units the state is expecting us to build, then it's a very big task. So yeah, I'm with Michelle. The more information we can push out to the public about what we're doing and why we have to do it, and the better we will be served when we make these changes. So
We can work on our messaging maybe a little bit. It's good for the
These
community.
are all great points, and we probably should have an update for you on these matters on every planning commission meeting, even if it's short, kind of give you a quick update.
Thank you.
not a bad idea. That way, when people stop us in the street or email us and ask questions, we can point to an agenda item or a staff report or a PowerPoint that will just say, here's what we know today. And if you want to make comments, here's a way to send an email to participate. That would be great. Good idea, Sam.
Actually, on that
And then
note, go for it. Sorry, Brenda.
I just had, we were just talking about all of our arena numbers and affordable housing and developments that are coming down the pipe. I have seen that there is, for like the Pacific Coast Commons, for example, there's a I don't know, public outreach, or there's a Zoom opportunity for people who are interested to kind of jump on and see what they have in mind. And, knowing that projects like that just don't happen every day, while they need to be thoughtfully constructed, there are a lot of good reasons, and this is an opportunity for the city to perhaps help with the kinds of things that we're just talking about right here, right now. And so does anybody know if is it there's open to the public for Pacific Coast Commons, what's coming up, that a date, or
Yeah,
that might be helpful.
Yeah, the applicant at staff's urging is holding a community meeting next Wednesday, the 31st.
Okay.
It's,
And how would people find out? Can they do that on the website, or is it through Pacific Coast Commons, or how will they have an opportunity to review or to participate or to witness?
The applicant at staff's urging sent out notices to residents within about a 300-foot radius and beyond, actually, in some areas. So the neighborhood around there. And and they just did a kind of an email blast to a lot of folks, but that was kind of the extent of the notification.
Okay.
Yeah. If you don't have that information, we'll be happy to shoot you an email with the meeting details if you're curious and wanted to kind of observe the meeting.
I've got it. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, that was my
That's it.
question, actually, who that went out to that we got, right? Because I think it's March 31st.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Sam, thank you for your report. Next, other business, there's none. So that brings us to a report from our city attorney's office. Anything tonight, Mr. King?
Nothing, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Okay, planning commissioner comments.
I'll start. I'm so excited to see kids walking to school today, middle schoolers and high
Yay.
schoolers. So that was a celebration in our house. And I appreciated Mr. Baldino's picture of my son social distancing and in his school uniform this morning. It was good. And then additionally, just what we've already covered is there are a lot, the next 6 months are going to be jam-packed with housing discussion and development discussion in general. So I appreciate your work and I'm really looking forward to it. I think we have an opportunity to kind of chart what this town's going to look like over the next decade. So your work is very important and I appreciate it.
Well said, Michelle.
Very, very well said. Nothing for me.
Anything else? Okay.
Good to see everybody.
Wait, I got something. Sorry. You guys haven't heard from me on Bike Pass in a long time. It's been several years. If there's any silver lining to this pandemic, it's been to bike sales in this in the world. I mean, bike sales have had the best sales in decades. But what that means is there's a lot more people on bikes now. And so, you know, in 2018, I asked for a staff report to talk about implementing the approved bicycle master plan in El Segundo. That's part of the larger South Bay cog of the South Bay bicycle plan. And staff made a report to us, and they showed us that they were going to implement bike lanes in phases over the next couple of years. Sharrows were put on Main Street and on Grand, which was great, you know, great start. But I think candidly, the schedule, the timeline of all the future bike lanes, including Nash, Douglas, you know, you got schools on, you got Weisburn there that has a 7-lane road with no bike lanes. School just opened up again. And so I'd love to get a staff report on how the city is going to handle rolling out of these bike lanes that they're now a couple of years behind on.
So that's a great point, Jay. You know what might be a good idea is now it's March. I'm not quite sure what the timeline is, but I know the Capital Improvement Committee will be getting together about this time of the year. I will speak with the Public Works Director and get some sort of timeline and maybe an agenda of when they're going to be discussing capital improvement projects. I can reach out to you if you want to participate in that discussion.
Yeah.
If all of you are interested, I can report back at the next Planning Commission on their schedule.
Yeah, and on one hand, you know, I know Elias and I know Lifan, and I was just going to pick up the phone and call him, but I thought, you know what, this is a public benefit, and so, you know, I know there's thousands of people watching us now, and everyone is either cheering at bike lanes or shaking their fists at me about bike lanes, but you know, it's I do know bike lanes were part of the capital improvements hierarchy over the last couple of years, and so we'd just love to see those back in the plan.
Well, we have a democratic process, and we are. I know Public Works is doing what they can with the limited resources, and it's all about prioritizing. So, if you're interested in that, we as a community should speak up and say what we think is important. So I'll find out that timeline and get back to you.
Great. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks for bringing that up, Jay. Any other comments? All right. Well, again, thank you guys for all the hard work you do. I really do appreciate it. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting will be April 8th, 2021 at 5:30 via Zoom. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. It's good seeing you.
Hi, everybody.
You
Have a good
too.
night.
Good night.